Malaria was discovered by a scientist named Alphonse Laveran. Alphonse Laveran was a military doctor, and he kind of discovered this disease amongst military people, which happened to be epidemic in those days. Now, this particular malaria is caused by a protozoan. Which type of protozoan? It was a sporozoan. So, this sporozoan is Plasmodium. Plasmodium here is a digenetic organism. It means it requires two hosts for completing its life cycle. One is definitive host or the primary host. Second is the intermediate or the secondary host. So, wherever the organism completes its sexual reproduction, we call it as definitive host. In this case, it happens to be female Anopheles mosquito, while the intermediate or the secondary host happens to be man. Now, there are basically 4 different types of Plasmodium protozoan, and each of them cause a little different type of malaria. So, the first one is tertian malaria. We call it as vivax malaria. This is caused by Plasmodium vivax. This is the most common form of malaria we see. Second one, we call it as quartan malaria. It is caused by Plasmodium malariae. It is not so highly potent. It is more simple and more easily recoverable when we see. The third one is called as malignant tertian malaria. It is highly potent, very dangerous, it is fatal. The reason why it is fatal, because the effect is in the cerebral region, and we call it as cerebral malaria. And the fourth type of malaria is ovale. It is mild tertian malaria caused due to Plasmodium ovale. Each of these types of malaria, each of these 4 types, you can see certain common symptoms. The symptoms are generally alternating each other. So, first will be a chill condition. We call it as a cold stage. During this time, the person is kind of shivering, which is one of the very common factors in case of malaria. Second, a very high fever, very hot face or the fever face is seen. And then you have the third phase, which is sweating. We also call this phase as wet stage. And after this, the fourth phase will be no symptom phase. And this cycle continues. So, after this fourth, again the first cycle continues. Now, each of these 4 types of malaria differs not only by the type of organism, but also on basis of how long or how different the each symptom is or how repetitive it is. In certain cases, it gets repeated every 24 hours. In certain other cases, it gets repeated after 72 hours. So, the symptoms are similar, but repetition time differs. One more way of identifying these organisms differently is based on their stains. Now, we know there is a stain which is called as hemazoin, which is also toxic in nature, is the one which causes fever. It is a pyrenogen, it causes fever, is going to be present inside RBC. The color pigmentation which is developed due to hemazoin in RBC varies in each of these organisms. For example, in case of vivax, this pigment is brown in color, while in case of falciparum, this pigment is black in color. Even in case of ovale, this is black in color. But in quartan malaria, that is due to Plasmodium malariae, the color is dark brown. So, by this way, we can differentiate the types of malaria.